All right, everybody. Let me double check and make sure we're live and everything's good to go. I think it is. Yep. All right. How's everybody doing? Can you guys hear me? New setup. First time I've done a live stream from my new office space. So I want to make sure that you guys are able to hear me and everything. How's it going? My goodness, what crazy times we live in. So I was actually thinking about doing a live stream later today. And then when I saw the news that President Biden had dropped out of the race officially, I thought, now's the time. Let's do it right now. Wild times indeed, JD. My goodness. So let's talk a little bit about this. Let's talk about some historic context and talk about what's happening. And I got to say something up front. I put in the title of this stream, you know what, I'll go back to this for a second. I put in the title of this stream that there's some life updates as well. And I'll get to that after we talk about the election a little bit. But also just want to mention in general that in light of the overwhelming popularity of videos where I have touched on some modern stuff a little more, I have recognized that the majority of you guys want to hear me talk about that stuff. And while I know it'll be a little more controversial, and I still don't want to get into being partisan about it, I want to try and remain as objective as I possibly can, recognizing, of course, my inherent bias that we all have. I am going to start talking more about things like the presidential election, mostly in the context of history. And in the context of parallels and rhymes that we see with other points in history, but here and there where appropriate, probably offer some observations as well. Let's get to some super chats here. We've got a couple of them already coming in, so I'm going to try to get to as many of your comments as I can. But Jeff, can't wait to hear what you have to say. Very historical. Yeah, crazy times we're living in. We've, in less than a week, we have had the attempted assassination of a former president / presidential candidate, obvious parallels to things like Theodore Roosevelt in 1912, Robert Kennedy in 1968, but also now a sitting president not running for re-election, which of course we had in 1968. And we've had other times as well, but that's the most recent time that it's happened. It's never happened quite like this before, where the president started out running, got the votes for his party's nomination, and then dropped out. And holy cow, can we now say that that was the most consequential presidential debate in history? Because this all started after the presidential debate. And I think it was maybe a big mistake on Donald Trump's part to agree to a debate so early. Because imagine if this had happened in October, there'd be nothing that could be done about it. So interesting when you think about all of that. Alex, give me Eisenhower over anyone today. 100%. I could not agree more with that statement. And I think most people in America would agree. I feel like the vast majority of Americans, this is an election where we would probably almost all say we would prefer two other candidates to the ones that we started out with. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Ricky Ticky Bobby Wobbin. Interesting name. Thank you for that. Do you think having Harris as the nominee helps or hurts Trump? It's really too early to tell. I've seen numbers that argue both ways. I feel like on the surface, she's about as unlikable as Trump. But I think once the debates, like once the campaign goes full screen, and I do believe it's going to be Kamala Harris, the vice president. First of all, as vice president, she seems like the natural successor in this situation. But also you see people like President Biden and a number of other prominent Democrats already throwing their support behind her. So I would be really, really surprised if she's not the nominee. And if she's smart, she picked someone like Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, as her running mate. I think that would be about as strong a ticket as Harris could put together as the presidential nominee. So I think it's too early to tell. I think we really have no idea what this is going to be. I think if I'm Donald Trump, I probably would prefer if Joe Biden stays in the race, because I don't see a scenario where Biden could have beaten Trump. I can see a scenario where Kamala Harris can beat Trump. So we'll see. So let's take a look at some of the news, and some, because it's still unfolding. I mean, as we speak. Jay Ray, thank you for that. Appreciate that. All of this is still unfolding, so I'm kind of getting caught up on the chat now. Empress Mermaid, thank you. Just imagine the textbooks in 50 years. Yeah, recognize, folks, these events that are happening right now in real time. This is the stuff that people are going to be talking about in history class. Our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren are going to be talking about this stuff. Think about just the last 4 years with the pandemic, and now with all of this. Crazy, crazy times, for sure. People are like, can we stop living in crazy times? Hope all is well. Thank you, Manny. What a time to be alive indeed. Zarnicki, crazy times. Yeah, I agree 100%. Simon, felt inevitable. Yeah, I agree. It did feel inevitable. I don't know that anyone's particularly surprised that this has happened. I think it was just a question of when and how. Any chance they draft RFK Jr.? No, I don't think so. It sounds like, and this is just my gut from reading between the lines, I think RFK Jr. probably was open to being Trump's running mate, and I think maybe he was even a little disappointed he didn't get offered the VP slot with Trump. I don't see that happening with the Democrats. I think RFK Jr., there's too big a chasm between him and some fundamental issues with the Democrats to where I don't think that would be a unifying choice for the Democrats. Can we draft Teddy Roosevelt? Yes. Yes. Tate Davis, I will be doing more campaign trail. In fact, I thought about doing it during this stream, but I think we're going to have so much to chat about that won't be necessary. As soon as this news broke, thank you for the super chat. I wanted to hear your thoughts. What a crazy time we're living in. I don't know which way I'm going to vote. It's crazy. Another historic first, at least in my lifetime. Two things happened with the nomination of J.D. Vance as the vice presidential candidate. Number one, it's the first Ohioan on a major party ticket since I've been alive, and I'm almost 50. And it would be the third youngest vice president in history if J.D. Vance gets elected vice president. So also interesting times on the Democrat side. How was church this morning? Church was great. I was gone 2 of the last 3 weeks because of travel. This past week because I was in New Orleans for the American Battlefield Trust, and the 2 weeks before that because I was in Scotland. Commie Killer, excellent point. There are a lot of similarities with 1968. Think about it. You had in 1968, you had the assassination, not an attempted, but a successful assassination of Robert Kennedy Sr., who had just won the California primary for the Democrats that day. And then, of course, in 1968, you had the sitting president, Lyndon Johnson, announcing he would not seek or accept his party's nomination for president. So definitely some parallels there. Alberto, off topic. No, so I thank you for the super chat. I made a post about this, but apparently not everybody saw it. So a few days before that last Checkmate Lincolnites video came out, Atten Shea actually emailed me and Mr. Terry, and it was a pretty long email, but the gist of it was basically that he was asking that we not do a reaction to that video. And as I've often said, while legally and according to YouTube's rules, I don't have to have permission from an original content creator to do a reaction. My personal policy is to honor those wishes when an original content creator specifically asks me not to, unless there are some extraordinary circumstances why I would not do that, and that hasn't happened yet. So he asked, and Mr. Terry and I both respected his wishes on that. So I won't be doing a reaction to that video. She won't run, but Michelle Obama would win. Here's what I'll say about that. And this is what happens anytime you have theoretical candidates where you say, what if Michelle Obama were to run? Right now, because she's not a candidate, because she's not a politician, she's going to poll really, really well against Donald Trump. If she actually entered the race and now has to start articulating positions and stand, I'm not saying she wouldn't win. I'm just saying it's not as cut and dry as that. Anytime you talk about hypothetical candidates always do better in polling than real ones do. The writers of the story keep giving us curveballs. Yes, Groovy, 100%. The dictator, this election feels like 1952 after Truman announced he wasn't seeking re-election. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of parallels to other elections where that has happened. For me, though, 68, I think, is more likely, especially because in 68, you had a scenario where had he enjoyed more support, I think Lyndon Johnson probably does run for re-election in 68. So there's some similarities there in terms of the groundswell of support being in opposition to his running in that race. Yeah, Jarrett, you're 100% right. Historical event after historical event. Super Dagome, thank you for that. Would I react to animated history of Poland? Interesting. I'll have to take a look at that. I'm not familiar with that one, but I love Polish history. Poland has a lot of amazing history. I'm going to do this one last super chat. I'll get caught up on the other one soon, but I want to take a look at some of what's happening here. Brady, thank you so much for that. And as I mentioned earlier, please stick around because I do have some updates of a personal nature in terms of my life that I want to just share briefly with you guys. And I will get to that in this particular stream. So obviously, if you did not see the post, I believe it was shared on X, or formerly Twitter. That's where I first saw it. Where he kind of gave a long list of the accomplishments of his administration. And then he said, while it had been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. Of course, in that time, he also praised Vice President Harris and endorsed her. And we're seeing like it's unfolding. I'm looking at this timeline on CNN because they're updating it kind of by the minute. So we're seeing a lot of these Democrats now coming out. And what you're going to see now are two things. Number one, you're going to see a lot of prominent Democrats coming out and endorsing the vice president so that they can build up that groundswell of support. So by the time they get to the convention, it'll be pretty much a done deal that the support is for Kamala Harris in that point. Now you have Speaker Mike Johnson calling on the president to resign. Now, here's another interesting curveball. I don't expect that to happen, but what if he did? What if Joe Biden resigns and makes Kamala Harris the incumbent president in this election? Does that give more gravitas to her position? Does that give her then an opportunity to show, by actually fulfilling the office for a few months before the election, the American people what she can do? That would be an interesting twist. I don't expect that to happen, but wouldn't that be something if Biden saw this opportunity to give America its first female president by resigning? I don't expect that to happen, but that's just something else to think about in all of this. Speakers calling, so you're going to have the Republicans responding a certain way. Democrats are going to come out and praise Joe Biden for his selfless act. And again, I'm not offering judgment on this stuff. I'm just kind of making observations. 100% that's what you're going to see happen now. You have many of the same people who were calling for Biden to step aside now praising him for this. Democratic whip, Dick Durbin, praises Biden for putting the country first. Michigan Governor Whitmer, which this is going to be a key state. There was a poll that came out today that had Trump up 7 points on Biden in the polls in Michigan. That's a huge battleground state. So you have Senator Tammy Baldwin, who's running for re-election in Wisconsin, which is another battleground state. Chuck Schumer calls Biden a true patriot and a great American. So that's some of what you have happening right now. Let's go ahead and go back to some more of the chat. So Spencer, I've answered this a couple times now, but maybe you didn't hear me. Church was great today. I had my kids with me, and everything went really well. It's great to see everybody there all the time. Adherent of Lady Columbia, thank you for that. Peter Zihan made a video that explains why the Democrats don't have new star power. Obama built an alternative to the Dem structure, decimating the Dems' ability to generate new leadership. Interesting. I'm not sure if I agree with that premise, but it's interesting to see that someone has kind of put that out there. Kamala's strong points. She's got that kind of prosecutor's instincts about her, so I think she'll debate very well. I don't remember the debate from 4 years ago between her and Pence all that much to really make observations, but I feel like in a debate with Donald Trump, she's gonna look pretty good in that scenario. I think she's a fighter. She's certainly much younger than Joe Biden, so she's going to bring youth and energy to the ticket. It's going to galvanize, I think, a lot of Democrat votes because of the opportunity to elect the first female president. Downside, I think she's viewed as much more partisan than Biden. I think Biden is more moderate than Kamala Harris. She's from California, which I don't think is going to play well in the Midwest, which is why it's going to be really, really important that she pick a running mate from the Midwest. I think her ideal running mate would be Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Honestly, I think he would be the best choice for the Democrats. My youngest son is downstairs screaming, and I think he might be coming in the room here in a minute. Maybe not. Maybe my sons are just fighting with each other. I think Josh Shapiro would have been the ideal candidate for the Democrats. He's likable. He's young. He's from a swing state. He, I think, would draw a lot of key votes. I think he's seen as more moderate. He works well with the other party. He's got a lot of things going for him. So I think he would be a good choice for vice president. I would not be surprised to see him as the vice presidential nominee. Austin, thank you for that. Much props from a fellow Ohioan. Interesting to hear your thoughts on a comparison to LBJ. Yeah, I was talking about this already a little bit. I think there definitely are some similarities. It's for different reasons. I don't think that the reasons for LBJ and Biden dropping out are the same. Obviously, Biden, it's his age. It's what people view as kind of cognitive decline. Give me 1 second while I tell my son to stop being so loud. Parenting never ceases. I didn't give them a heads up that I was live streaming, so they didn't know to be quiet. But yeah, there's similarities in that there's a view that the sitting president can't win re-election. And in LBJ's case, you've got Vietnam and a lot of other factors going on there. So there are definitely some parallels, just for different reasons. Jose, thank you for that. I was just talking about this. I do not think Biden will resign. I could see some potential reasons why he might consider that, but I don't think there will be a push for him to do that. I think all the same people who pushed for him to drop out of the race are now praising him. And I would be really, really surprised if there was a groundswell of support on the Democratic side for him to resign. I really don't see that happening. So, Joe, current news seems to suggest Harris is looking at Roy Cooper, North Carolina governor. That would be a solid choice, too. Though, just thinking about it on the surface, I feel like Shapiro brings more to the table for the ticket than Cooper does. But there are certainly other factors at play, including the personal relationship that Kamala Harris might have with each of these men. That certainly would be a factor. But yeah, I think that would be a solid choice as well. It's pretty unusual for you to have a Democratic governor in North Carolina, though North Carolina is increasingly kind of a swing state too. How about Hillary Clinton? Nah. If your whole purpose in pushing Biden out was his age. Hillary Clinton just has too many parallels to him. I'm not saying she's as in cognitive decline as he seems to be, but I feel like that, especially if you have Kamala Harris, you're not going to replace Kamala Harris with Hillary Clinton. There's no upside to that I can see. All right, let's get caught up here. Patrick, thank you for being a member for 6 months. The only certainty at this point is that we will have a 47th president. Yes, that is now a certainty. Whoever is elected will be the 47th president, even if it's Donald Trump. And that would be another parallel. If Donald Trump wins re-election, you're looking at the second time in American history that we have a president who's two numbers, right? We had 22nd and 24th president in Grover Cleveland because he was elected, lost re-election, then won 4 years later. Crippled Legend, thank you. Discovering your channels remind me of the fascination and love I have for history. I'm so glad that I've told people before that is one of the greatest compliments anybody can give me, is that if anything I've done on the channel has helped rekindle or kindle for the first time your love of history, then I feel like then I've accomplished a lot. Do I have any plans, Flex Tape, thank you for that, to make any videos about UK prime ministers? So yeah, at some point I will. I will say this. People have asked me to do like a tier ranking of prime ministers. I don't know enough about all of the UK prime ministers to feel that I can adequately judge them in such a way as to do a tier ranking. My friend Joe could certainly do that, who was just in the chat a few minutes ago. I showed you his comment that he made. He certainly could do that. He's intimately familiar with that. And maybe sometime when Joe and I are together, that's something we can do. Maybe we'll sit down and do a stream together and he can rank the prime ministers. Would not be the first ever Ohio VP if elected. Here's the thing. It depends entirely on how you define an Ohio VP. We've had three vice presidents who were born in Ohio. I'm not sure that any of them were like from Ohio when they were elected. So here's what I mean by that. Ronald Reagan, when people think of him, they think of him as being from California. He was born in Illinois, in Dixon, Illinois, but he's from California because he was a governor of California. Barack Obama, he's elected from Illinois. Abraham Lincoln elected from Illinois, but they were both born in other states, Obama in Hawaii and Lincoln in Kentucky. So multiple states can claim those people. We've had three vice presidents that were born in Ohio. The most recent was Charles Dawes, who was Calvin Coolidge's vice president. He's also the son of Rufus Dawes, who was commander of the 6th Wisconsin in the Iron Brigade during the Civil War. Charles Dawes was born in Marietta, Ohio, which is along the Ohio River in eastern Ohio. So he's the most recent born in Ohio president or vice president. Ariel, hello from Israel. Been a fan from 2020. Trump about to cook Harris. Anything's possible. I think it's way too early to tell what's going to happen. We're going to need to give some time. We need to wait until after the Democratic convention, see how support coalesces behind Harris, see who her running mate is. I think by the end of August, we should have a fairly good idea how this race looks. But right now, way too early to tell. I think it's easy on the surface to say that Trump will probably poll well against her, but I've seen some polls where she polls better than Biden does. And until somebody's actually in the race, it's impossible to say. You're almost 50. I had you down as 35. Well, thank you for that, Jeremy. I will actually be 47 in 2 weeks. My birthday's coming up on August 5th. And according to some website that I was on, like celebrity birthdays, I'm like the 39th most famous August 5th birthday. I know Neil Armstrong was born on August 5th. Great books guy. Thank you for that. Is there any historical analogy to Trump's attempt to overturn? I still hesitate to call it quite like that because we don't really know for sure how involved Donald Trump was with all of that. Was it a scenario where my personal view, and listen, I don't pay real close attention to this stuff. I kind of avoid modern politics. It drives me nuts most of the time. Do I believe he's got some responsibility in how that all went down? Absolutely. But I think it was less actively like acting and making it happen, and more by his rhetoric and by his lack of action on that day, allowing it to happen. I'm not saying he's not culpable or responsible, but I don't know how we compare it, because I don't think we fully understand exactly what his role was in all of that. I'm not sure that we ever will. Joshua, thank you. Normally, as a Brit, I wouldn't care too much, but I host a young Ukrainian in my home. Have a lot of hope Trump doesn't win for his sake. Interesting. I've actually been really, really surprised at the Republican stance on Ukraine, because I honestly didn't expect it. I thought they would have been much more supportive of Ukraine than they have been. So we're seeing, and I've said this before, the United States has gone through a series of what we call party systems, which are eras in our political history in which the parties have looked a certain way. And it started with the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and then you had the Whigs and the Democratic Republicans, and then you have the Republicans and the Democrats, and they've gone through several iterations. And I think that in the last 10 years and in the next coming 10 years or so, we will have transformed into a new party system, and the lines will be redrawn. I think we see, for example, the Republicans becoming more and more the party of the working class than they had been before. I'm not saying that they're going to replace the Democrats in that way, but I think there's more of a battle for that electorate. You even see things like you saw a prominent union president speaking on behalf of Donald Trump. I think foreign policy, there's undergoing a shift in what that looks like with the two parties. So I think 10 years from now, the parties are going to look really, really, they already do, but even more so in another 10 years, they're going to look really, really different than they did, say, in 2000. Really, really different. And I don't know that we fully know what that's going to look like quite yet. Brian, thank you for that. How did other attempted assassinations, Theodore Roosevelt, George Wallace, affect those elections? Not as much as what I think this one might have. And I think, too, it's too early to tell on this one. I did see a lot of people saying things like what you're saying, which is, oh, man, now that Trump had that moment with the fist up and survived an assassination attempt, that he just kind of solidified the election. But now we've had another huge shakeup, so all bets are off. I think if what happened to Theodore Roosevelt had happened today, shot point blank in the chest, still gives the speech, everybody would have been saying the same thing. Roosevelt's going to win now after all of that. Look at that guy. It didn't work out that way. So too early to tell, but I'm guessing probably like those other situations, it won't have a huge impact by the time we're all said and done. Kai, thank you for that. RFK Jr. running. I'm still not sure who RFK Jr. running hurts more. I think he probably divides that pretty even. Israel-Palestine protests could kill the Democrats. Possibly. I mean, those are certainly going to be factors. Whether they help or hurt or indifferent to the Democrats and Republicans, I'm not sure yet. I thought this was a really good comment. I like this one. Brent, feels like someone forgot to hit historical focus in Hearts of Iron 4. Accurate. As I said earlier, please stick around to the end. Once we get through some of these comments, I do have a couple of things of a personal nature that I want to share with you guys, some things going on in my life. And also some updates about some things that have been happening with the channel too. I think that it would be, thank you, Tank, be a major for the Democrats to choose Kamala. She's more unpopular than Biden. That's possible, but as I've said before, until somebody's actually running, we can't really know for sure. once she's the nominee, and I assume she will be, and once she picks a vice president, a running mate, then we'll see how that all shakes out. I think for now it's too early to tell. And I think there will be an initial boost for her in the polls as the newly minted nominee. But once the opposition ads start running, once the Trump campaign starts focusing its efforts toward her, it might be a different story. We'll see. Sean, thank you for that. What pre-1900 president or American would be able to consolidate a 1984 electoral map? John Marshall? I don't know. He was pretty polarizing in the day. I mean, 1984 was interesting in that you nearly had the candidate win all 50 states. Ronald Reagan was just a couple thousand votes away from winning Minnesota. He did lose D.C., but as far as the 50 states go, a few thousand more votes, and he would have won Minnesota, which is Walter Mondale's home state, and he would have won all 50 states. As it was, he won 49 states. It was just a bloodbath. Let's see. I think Pete Buttigieg would be an exciting choice for Democrats to combat the youth charisma of J.D. Vance. I agree, though. I don't think. I think Pete Buttigieg from 4 years ago, maybe. I'm not sure that his tenure as transportation secretary has been so stellar as to propel him to a presidential nomination at this point. Can we please get someone under 50 for president? Well, I mean, you're going to have somebody under 50 for vice president. J.D. Vance is 39. He's going to be 40 here in a couple of weeks. He'd be the third youngest vice president in history. Only two that would be younger than him would be John Breckinridge, who was vice president at 36. He was elected in 1856. And then Richard Nixon, who would have been just, I think, a couple of months younger than J.D. Vance when he took office. The Dictator, unrelated, but please check out the trailer for the new World War I game, Over the Top. I have seen it. I think I've actually been sent a game key for that so that I can play it. Spencer, what's a good book covering the Civil War from beginning to end besides Shelby Foote's trilogy? Who's the other guy that's got trying to remember his name off the top of my head. Is it McPherson? Yeah, I think it's James McPherson. Is that the guy that wrote Battle Cry of Freedom? When I'm streaming, I have a hard time thinking about those things. I'm going to actually do a book recommendation list for stories of the Civil War for that channel. Hoodie Gray, thank you for that. In your opinion, how strong is Biden's endorsement of Harris since he was projected to lose anyway? I think it is important because I think that he sets the tone, and it's not just going to be Biden's endorsement of Harris. It's going to be, you've already had Chuck Schumer and others coming out as well, speaking well of Biden, and they're going to build him up, and then they're going to coalesce behind the vice president. So I think it's going to be from the top down. A lot of prominent Democrats are going to come out in support of her. Ray, yes, all of my live streams stay up on the channel, so you will be able to see it just like you do any of the others. Still getting caught up. I'm actually, holy cow, I'm 20 minutes behind on the chat. So I'm trying to catch up as fast as I can, guys. Ariel, I need to ask you, how do you think historians would rank Trump 50 to 100 years from now? Impossible to say. I think he'll probably move up a little bit. But again, if he gets reelected, that's going to play into it too. People tend to not be as popular in their second terms as they were in their first. It's impossible to say right now. I'd be surprised if he ever goes up higher than the 30s, if he goes even that high. All right, I'm still working on getting caught up here, guys. I apologize. And I apologize, too, that I'm not being able to get to a lot of the other chat. We've got 1,900 people in the stream. So I'm trying to get to these as quickly as I can. That can happen. It is possible. Monet Simmons. Yep. I'm going to get to the last of the, try and get caught up on the super chats. And then I just have a couple other announcements I want to make before we talk more about this. Ulysses Grant, thank you. Gerald Ford predicted the first female president would come out of the death or resignation of the male president. Good point. And like I said, I mean, I can see, I'd give it like a 10% chance, but I can see a scenario where Biden would see an opportunity there to say, hey, I'm going to give the country the first female president, and he can make that part of his legacy. But I feel like, and especially if he thinks that it would empower her to then get elected on her own. But I feel like it would maybe backfire some. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like I said, I think that's unlikely that happens, especially given his statement where he just said he's going to focus his efforts now on finishing his term. Benjamin, thank you. I think Biden only resigns if and after she wins. I think at that point he probably wouldn't do it, but hey, maybe. Like I said, never know. Patrick, when someone mentions that someone could win against someone, I always say X candidate, X election. It's all about the current political climate. Absolutely. Don't put too much stock into hypotheticals, because until a person's actually in the race, actually running, and we can really see, nobody knows for sure. That's why I say, you know what? A lot of people were saying, well, Kamala Harris would do even worse against Trump. Well, that may be true in a hypothetical scenario, but not in a real life scenario. Plus, we don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of months in this election. Really have no idea. No, Joe Biden did indeed endorse Vice President Harris, and others are already doing so. Thoughts on other nominees? Gavin Newsom would be an absolute disaster. Last poll I saw had him 11 points worse than Biden against Trump. He is not the choice. There's no way. Whitmer, maybe. She's from the Midwest. That would help a lot. But again, I don't see. I think it would have to be a compelling candidate to replace the vice president at the top of that ticket. I just don't see it happening. I think she's going to be the nominee. The only question is who she puts on the ticket with her. And being a California liberal Democrat, she's got to put a Midwesterner on the ticket who's more moderate than her. That's why I think it's got to be somebody like Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, though I could see the governor of North Carolina being a good choice as well. I'm still 22 minutes behind, guys. I'm trying to get caught up on the chat as quick as I can. Eden's Mind. Many people I know stated they could not vote for Trump due to cognitive issues, but already state now they could vote, so it's too soon. Yeah, it doesn't matter what people say. It only matters what they actually end up doing. So, yeah, I could see a scenario where this makes Jason, that's kind of the point I'm making, is that the polls up until now are meaningless because the polls are a hypothetical. If she were the nominee, well, she wasn't the nominee. If she becomes the nominee and then you actually have a race and you start comparing and contrasting, different story. Look at 2 months ago. Nobody on the Democrat side was saying anything about Joe Biden's cognitive decline. A lot of Republicans were talking about it, but until you actually had the debate and people really saw it, it was all just hypothetical. Then it became real. Same thing happens here. We have no idea what's going to happen. But I think they had to do something. Joe Biden was not going to win that election. The only certainty was that Donald Trump was going to beat Joe Biden. So this is really the only play the Democrats had. They had to do something. Phenomenon, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Matthew, thank you. You messaged me on Instagram. I'll have to check that. I need to get caught up on my message. I get a ton of messages on Instagram and emails too. A video on your grandfather's Medal of Honor recipient. Yes, absolutely. That would be a great video to do. When we're done here later on this evening, I'll check my Instagram messages and get back to you about that. Dino, I agree. I think Shapiro has been solid in Pennsylvania. I think he would be a good choice. Honestly, I think he'd be a good nominee for president for the Democrats. I think he would probably beat Donald Trump. But again, it's hard to say until that actually happens. Hey, Mr. Beat in the chat, huh? I got to scroll back and see where he is. I agree, Matt. I think Shapiro would be not only a strong contender, I think he's a strong choice. I think he would bring a lot to the table for the Democrats, and I think he would be a good counter to J.D. Vance for the Democrats. No, it won't be Sherrod Brown. I don't think Sherrod Brown helps the Democrat ticket. Even though he's a Northeast Ohio guy, I just don't see it. All right, getting caught up. Harris is a horrible debater. Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her. I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I think Tulsi Gabbard would have been an interesting choice for Trump. He didn't go down that road, of course, but I don't know. I don't really, like I said earlier, I don't remember enough about the debate between Harris and Pence to really make any observations about that. Thank you for that. From Netherlands, just heard it. Is Trump too old too? I mean, I think a lot of people would argue that he is. Look at it this way. Think about this. Bill Clinton was elected president 32 years ago. George W. Bush was elected president 24 years ago. They were born the same summer that Donald Trump was. June, July, and August of 1946. 3 presidents of the United States were elected in those 3 months. All right, getting caught up. I'm still 22 minutes behind. Bernie Sanders now. I think his time has come and gone. I can't imagine them dragging Bernie Sanders in as the nominee when you have the sitting vice president available, and she already has a lot of the infrastructure for all of that. Phenomenal. Thank you for that. As a non-American, I appreciate the balanced opinions offered by someone on the other side of some of my politics. Love the civility here. I do too. I think it's important that we can demonstrate that it's okay to be passionate about what you believe in and what you stand for without having to be personal about it. And I feel like we've lost that, and I'd like to gain some of that back, even if it's only a little bit at a time. And I've got 2,100 people in this chat right now, so hopefully we're able to do that. And I apologize if you are asking questions or making comments and I'm not catching those. There's just so many in a chat this group or this size. Jeremy, thank you. Interesting to contrast our recent election with yours. Will Republicans praise Biden and promise constructive politics? Well, I think we've already seen a little bit of what we expect. What we can expect. Let's take a look at that for just a second. Because here, so we have the DNC chair saying American people will hear from the Democratic Party on next steps. Yeah, they're going to have to be really careful here because remember, the Democratic Party has been talking a lot about the importance of defending democracy and being very critical of what happened on January 6th. So they have to be cautious of how they do this because through the democratic process of voting, Joe Biden was nominated to be the vice presidential or the presidential nominee. He has now stood aside and presumably would be releasing his delegates to vote for someone else. But they have to be careful how they go about this process. Now, remember, up until 100 years or so ago, this is how it was done. They went to the convention, the delegates were there, and they voted for the candidate of their choice. And a lot of times, the person who went in as the presumptive nominee didn't end up getting it. And people who weren't even on anybody's radar screen, like James Garfield in 1880, ended up getting the nomination. So we're kind of going back to that now where the delegates have a chance to do that. So the Democrats are going to make sure that they're transparent, that they're upfront about what the process is going to look like. They make sure that people feel like their voices are being heard. Individual delegates will now select the party's nominee on the convention floor in Chicago or potentially during a virtual roll call tentatively scheduled for early August. So Democratic donors expressed support for Harris following Biden's announcement. We did see somebody was asking about, so Hakeem Jeffries has not mentioned Harris. Interesting. But somebody asked about the Republicans and what they might do if they would praise Biden. I think some will, but we've already seen the Speaker of the House now calling on Biden to resign, because if he's not fit to run for president, he shouldn't be president, is kind of the line that he's taking. And right now, that is the top Republican in government, is the Speaker of the House. And there's another one, Senator Steve Daines, the chair of the GOP's campaign arm, calling for Biden to resign. So it seems like that's the way the Republicans are going with this. I'm not sure that's their best option. And I think if once they see there's no traction with that argument, they'll probably back off on that. Fast break report. I don't know if I agree about that. I think there are certain advantages to only running a 3-month campaign. There's less time for people to scrutinize you, especially if they were to pick a dark horse candidate, somebody like Josh Shapiro, who is popular locally but doesn't have a national profile. Kamala Harris, less so, because she is so well known. She's the vice president. She ran for president, so people are familiar with her. So if she's already got the backing of the donors and she gets the backing of the party, I think she can pull it off in 3 months. I guess we'll see, though. Yeoman Basket, that's actually a point I was going to make, is that while I think there would be a lot of praise for the opportunity for there to be a first female president, if a first female president came about because Joe Biden resigned in his last 6 months in office, especially if it came before the election as some way of empowering her as the incumbent president in that election, I think that's probably not the ideal scenario. I think the ideal scenario, not only for the woman who is elected, but also for the country, is if the country votes in a woman as president. I think that would be best. Empress Mermaid, can we run the ghost of Grant, the ghost of Garfield, and the ghost of Theodore Roosevelt in a 3-way race? I'd be all for that, though that's 3 Republicans, and I think anyone on the Democrat side might not like that. That noob, Harris Whitmer ticket is your prediction. It's possible. I mean, Whitmer checks a lot of boxes for the Democrats. I would be surprised to have 2 women on the ticket, though. I'd be surprised if that happened. Not that it couldn't. And there's no reason that it can't. Pax, thank you for that. Alden, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And if you did not see the beginning of the stream, we were talking some about some of the parallels and things like that. This will all be live later on, so you'll be able to see it all. I'm just going to check a couple of other things real quick here before we continue on. So just bear with me for a second, guys. Okay. Bolwa, who do I think could be potential Dem VP? As I've mentioned a few times, but for those just joining, I think it's going to be a more moderate Democrat. It's going to be somebody younger. It's going to be male, and it's probably going to be a governor. I mentioned I think my top pick for the Democrats would be Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. I think he ticks all the boxes for what they need. I think he'd be a good counter to J.D. Vance. My friend Joe, who is heavily involved in politics himself, suggested that he's seeing the possibility of the governor of North Carolina, which I think would also be a solid choice. Sean, that's certainly possible. My gut says Shapiro wants to wait for a clean ticket in 2028. Good chance, but you never know. But yeah, Roy Cooper, governor of North Carolina, is interesting. I think the governor of North Carolina would have to be a net positive for the Democrats in Georgia, which is a battleground state in this election, for sure. All right, trying to get caught up desperately. What are the odds that the Democrats split the vote? They won't. They will go into the convention having coalesced behind a nominee. They do not need and they do not want a contested nomination process. They want this to be sewn up in the next couple of days, I think. If they don't know for sure who the nominee is going to be 3 days from now, there's a problem. Tomas, thank you. There's a great video of the M4 Sherman titled Slightly Confusing Guide to the Sherman. It's a good watch. Love from Lithuania. Cool. I would love to get to Lithuania sometime down the road. Thank you for that. Patrick, this election is the first election in a while where the vice presidential nominee bears a fair amount of importance. The who, the where. Great point. I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think especially 8 years ago with Trump, that was not the case with Trump and Clinton. I think it was all about the top of the ticket in that case. So I agree with you. I think the vice president, especially with Donald Trump being older, 100%. Florence, I've been trying to read as many of the normal comments that I can, but here I would love to get on the other ones, but I've got so many super chats that I have to get to those, and I'm way behind on those. It's certainly not intentional. There's 2,100 people in the chat, and so just even doing the super chats, I'm currently 28 minutes behind on those. Praveen, there's an alternative version of the 1948 election where Truman drops out. Inflation, unpopular president, third party, bad polling, Israel, Russia. Great points. That is not an election I thought too much about the parallels, but absolutely, definitely some parallels there. Thank you for that. If age is such a concern, here's the problem with legislating it. It's not simply age, because you could have a 50-year-old that has cognitive decline. I think it's specific to this particular president because it's been so obvious that there's an issue there. Go back and look at a video of Joe Biden from 2015 when he was vice president. Completely different guy. If that Joe Biden was president now, we're not having this conversation, no matter what his age is. There's a distinct and very noticeable change in the man that happens to most of us when we get to be in our mid 80s, which is where he is, where he's at. Well, he's 82. 82. He'll be 82 in November, so early 80s. Pax, do I think J.D. Vance represents my values? Honestly, I still don't know that much about J.D. Vance. I need to take a look at. I want to read his book. I want to study him more. Honestly, even though he's a senator from my state, I didn't honestly pay that much attention to that election. Here's the thing: 10 years ago, man, I was glued to national television 24/7. I was on top of all of this stuff. And honestly, I got so jaded by it in the last 10 years that I've honestly distanced myself from a lot of it because I was just so frustrated and angry and just didn't like the direction we were going in our politics that I kind of avoided a lot of it. So I need to, especially if I'm going to be commenting more on the channel about these current events like I have been recently, I need to do a better job of being up to date on this stuff. So Siraj, thank you for becoming a member. Very much appreciated. Uncanny, thank you. Was the decision to skip debates at the Dem primaries and expose Biden's mental state months ago the biggest mistake of this election cycle? No, that wasn't. I don't think they saw that as a mistake at the time because I think it was important to them that there not be a nomination process. When you have the incumbent, you don't want an ugly nomination battle. So they were trying to avoid that. And by not having debates, they were trying to avoid any potential for that. I don't think anybody was necessarily trying to hide anything. Maybe. Tim Johnson, thank you. Is Trump, Cleveland, FDR the only ones to run? No, a lot of people have. Cleveland ran 3 times. FDR did. Only ones to run in the general election and receive significant votes. Lots of people have run 3 times. Grant tried to get the nomination for a 3rd term as president. Others have as well. But yeah, those are the most significant examples. Jed Bartlett is the best option at this point. Yes. In fact, I'd even vote for the actor who played Jed Bartlett, Martin Sheen. I don't agree with him on a lot of his politics, but I do respect him immensely. I got to spend some time with him a few months ago. Amazing guy, absolutely amazing guy. I don't need to agree with him to feel like I think he would do a good job and want what's best for the country. And he's the same age as Joe Biden and Donald Trump. He's kind of right in there. He's actually a little bit older. I think he's 83. Nico Boy, finally caught a live stream. Thank you. Been watching you since the basement days. Yes, the basement days. My goodness. I haven't even lived in that house since 2018. That was when I lived in that house in the basement. So the basement days. Oh, wait, no. The basement at the new house. The old house was where I started my gaming channel. The basement days at the new house. Yeah, that goes back to 2020 when I started the channel. Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah, Speaker of the House is from Shreveport, Louisiana. Actually, my friend Daryl Scott, who founded Rachel's Challenge, is a friend of Mike Johnson because he's also from Shreveport, Louisiana. Nerd Jacob, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate that. Matt's Remy, thank you as well. I'm slowly getting caught up. Doesn't the convention have to be thrown open? Correct, Brad. Thank you for that super chat. They cannot be forced to vote for Harris, but there can be a nomination for Harris, and they can engineer it in such a way that it would be difficult to nominate someone else. But no, I think they have to have an open vote, but they want to avoid that at all costs. The Democrats do not need a contested floor vote for the nominee. They need to go into that convention knowing who the nominee is and rallying behind that candidate. I think any other scenario really hurts them. History Dose, happy early birthday, Chris. Thank you. Hey, and safe travels and good luck on your Mongolia trip. I know that's coming up real soon. I am so excited to hear about that and to see your pictures and videos that you might shoot from that. That'll be fun. Brady, thank you for the super chat. No chance. Cory Booker is not a unifying candidate for the Democrats. I think there's too many negatives there. Just don't see it at all. Derek DeBon, thank you. I want a Republican win, but I think Harris as the nominee hurts Trump. Could very well be. She's 59. Democrats can play a reverse card saying he's too old, and they will. They absolutely will do that now in this scenario. But yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a closer race than people are saying right now. Here for years. Thank you. Do I see the Electoral College ever being scrapped? I do not. The support just could not be there. You would need a whole bunch of states with 3 electoral votes or very few electoral votes to basically sign off on becoming irrelevant. And they're not going to do that. It's not going anywhere. Regardless of how I personally feel about it, it's not going anywhere. There's just no way that happens. Juan, thank you. I'm an August guy too, 25th here. It's a kind of a long-standing tradition in my family to have August birthdays. My mom's the 4th, mine's the 5th. My grandfather who raised me was the 15th. His sister was the 20th. Another one of his sisters was the 30th. My son's is the 29th. My son's cousin, who is my cousin's child that was born the same week, is August 27th. Yeah, we get a lot of August birthdays in my family. I'm sick of living in interesting times. I think that's what my daughter has said a number of times, is like, can it stop being historical anytime now, please? Matt, you're aware of the 13 keys to the White House? Biden dropping out but staying on as president. The Democrats have lost the incumbency key. Yeah, I mean, they're still the incumbent party. So there's that. And you have the incumbent vice president. So I don't think it's a huge, in this case, I think the incumbency was a hindrance because of who the incumbent is. Marcus, thank you for that. Oh, yes. I was getting caught up on emails today, Marcus. I will respond to you soon. As soon as I get done with this stream, I'm going to get caught up on my messages and streams. All All right, let me hurry up and get to these last super chats, and then I just have a couple of other things I want to cover in addition to the election. Thank you, Nick, for that. I'm going to go through these as fast as I can. The Dictator, thank you. Yes, I did. I saw that the first time you mentioned it. World War I game over the top. I think they sent me a key for that. So I should be able to play that some point on the gaming channel. Great books guy, JD Vance, Vance Refrigeration, a worse VP candidate than Sarah Palin. No, I don't think so. I think Vance is a good candidate. I think he's way better than Sarah Palin as a candidate. I think Vance helps them. He's young. He's from Ohio, which Ohio I think was going to go to Trump regardless, but I think he helps them in other states. I think you counter JD Vance with somebody like Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. I think that would be an interesting debate. Groovy. Trump is a 1990s Democrat. To a point, I think there's some truth to that, but I think there are a lot of Democrats or Republicans who would be 1990s Democrats. Like I said earlier, we're seeing a massive shift in both parties to where 10 years from now, they will look completely different than they did 10 years ago. We're already seeing some of that. Adherent of Lady Columbia, thank you. If the GOP put forward abolishing the income and property taxes, put in national sales and 5 to 10% tariff on all imports, I'd be game. Those are huge shakeups, and I think a lot of people would support them, but I think they're too radical to have any mainstream support. No matter how viable those things might be, I just don't see a scenario where they could run on that and actually have any reasonable degree of success in implementing it. European, I think I disagree with that. I think Gavin Newsom's probably one of the worst possible choices for the Democrats, definitely worse than Kamala Harris. When is the deadline to get on the ballot for Ohio? If it hasn't already hit, it's very, very soon, but there can be a waiver given, and it's been given in the past. But that is a great point that hasn't been talked about, is that there is a pretty early deadline, and the deadline in Ohio does come before the convention to get on the ballot. Pranay, as a conservative, what effect do you think the immunity decision will have? I think the only impact it really has is that it reinforces what the Democrats have already been saying, which is that, and you saw Biden propose this already, and I think they'll carry forward with this, is it'll reinforce the idea that the Democrats want to make some really significant and serious changes to how the Supreme Court works with things like term limits. I don't think it'll happen. I just don't see, especially with a strong conservative majority on the court currently. And that was a long game that the Republicans have been playing for decades, and they played it way better than the Democrats did. And I think the Democrats realize that now. As long as the Senate is as evenly divided as it's been, I don't see a scenario where they can get that pushed through. Especially because I think the Republicans are going to come out with a narrow majority in the Senate in this year's election, because all of the seats that are kind of toss-ups at this point are Democrat seats, and the Democrats have to hold every single one of them. If they lose even one or two, they lose control of the Senate. So I don't think that's going to do a lot beyond giving a talking point about the state of the Supreme Court. And it kind of removes that from the discussion in the election in terms of the ramifications of a pending court case for Trump, which are now not really there. So, John, thank you. I really appreciate that. Glad you made it to the stream. You made it to a doozy, that's for sure. DJ, are we even so sure Harris will be the nominee? We're not sure. I mean, anything's possible, but it does seem like the Democrats are coalescing around her to be the nominee. And I think they're going to want to move quickly on that. In fact, let's get some updates here. So here you go. Elizabeth Warren has endorsed Vice President Harris. Lawmakers, of course, all praising Biden. Biden and Harris spoke on Sunday. He probably told her, and then he threw his support behind her. Senator Tim Kaine, who was the 2016 nominee for vice president, has endorsed her. Her allies will meet tonight to discuss the path forward. Congressional Black Caucus has endorsed Harris. So there you go. All the prominent Democrats are already throwing their support behind her. So I think you're going to see that very quickly happen. They're gonna coalesce behind her. They need unity moving forward. John Flynn, thank you. Biden just dropped out, right? Yeah, kind of the reason for the stream. So yeah, thank you for that. Pax, just read Albion Seeds. Trump is definitely a borderer. Interesting. Oh, you just read Albion Seeds. Okay. VTH for president. I want no part of that. You have to have a thick enough skin to be on YouTube because people are critical no matter how kind and friendly and middle of the road you try to be. But man, I want no part of that, and I wouldn't put my family through that at all. William Cosgrove, thank you so much. Patrick, if Jimmy Carter lives beyond January 20th, he will tie Martin Van Buren in terms of the amount of successor presidents he lived to see. Van Buren saw 8. Interesting. I had not heard it described that way. I mean, obviously, he's the oldest former president in history. Matt Bowe, will you be reacting to Max Miller's new vid on Andersonville? Absolutely. First of all, I love his videos, but Andersonville, obviously a topic that I'm very passionate about. 100%, I will definitely be doing that one. McPherson, that's who I'm thinking of. OTD, military history. That's who I was trying to think of, was James McPherson. Definitely, in terms of Civil War histories, great choice. Jacob and Moore, what's your take on the Ronald Reagan movie? I think it looks good. I think Dennis Quaid's pulling off a pretty good Ronald Reagan. Looks like it covers the whole history, the ups and the downs. It looks like it's going to be a fairly balanced approach to his complicated life story and presidency. Got some pretty big named actors in it. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm definitely looking forward to watching it. I wish we had more such things about prominent politicians and historical figures. Bolruwa, any potential Democratic vice presidential nominees to come to mind? Yeah, I've mentioned this several times already. I think Josh Shapiro would be my choice if I were the Democrats. Abe's fadeaway. I know you mentioned you lean conservative. Is it disappointing for you to see Trump water down the GOP's stance on abortion, or Trump just being the most socially liberal Republican ever? Obviously, his views don't reflect mine personally. Is it disappointing to me? No, there are far greater things about Donald Trump that disappoint me than his stance on abortion. I think his view probably reflects the mainstream view on abortion in America, just like his view might not reflect the most conservative Republicans on issues involving LGBTQ, whatever the letters are these days. I don't keep up, and I don't mean that as an insult. I'm just saying I don't really keep up. But I think his views on those topics, his social views, are probably much more moderate and mainstream than the average Republican, and I think that actually probably makes him appeal more to moderates, which isn't a bad thing, even if I might not personally agree with those things. I think Pete Buttigieg is a great VP pick for Harris. Yeah, he's a good communicator, absolutely. I find him personally very likable as well, but I don't think he's got much of a record to run on it. I don't get the impression that his tenure as Secretary of Transportation would bring a great deal to the ticket. Okay, let's see where we're at. All right, I'm going to before I get to the rest of these super chats here, because I'm not getting caught up. I want to get to a couple of other announcements real quick before we go too much further. I am happy as someone being on the ticket. it's great anytime we have somebody from Ohio. It gives us kind of reflection, and reflects on us a little more and gives us more of a spotlight. And JD Vance has hillbilly roots like I do, so that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I like that he's somebody young, and I'd like to see the Democrats do the same thing and maybe nominate somebody that's like in their late 30s, early to mid 40s. And I think they probably will, but we'll see. All right, before I get to the rest of the super chats and try to get caught up with everything, I do want to take a couple minutes to kind of shift gears for a minute from the political stuff that we're talking about, and just share real quickly some personal stuff. I was going to make a video specifically about this, and I might still do that because I know not everybody will see this kind of buried in the middle of a live stream, but I know a lot of our most loyal viewers of the channel are here on the live stream. I've had a lot of questions, especially people who follow me on Instagram or who just pay really close attention to such things. I've had some folks ask why they haven't seen Mrs. VTH in any live streams. You didn't see her in our recent trip that I took my kids to Scotland in, or for that matter, heard me talk much about my wife lately. And there is a reason for that. So many of you know that I've gone through a lot of loss personally in the last few years. We lost. So first of all, I want to preface everything I'm about to say by saying, for those who don't know, I was raised by my maternal grandparents who were in their 30s when I was born. So while they were young enough to be my parents, they were biologically my grandparents, but they were my parents. So I was raised by my grandparents, and my mom's 4 brothers grew up in the same house as me as my brothers. So while they were biologically my uncles, they were my brothers, just in reality. So we lost my brother Mike, who's only 5.5 years older than me, to COVID about 2.5 years ago. And then we lost the parents who raised me in the last 1.5 years. My grandfather passed away at the end of 2022, in December of 2022. And then my grandmother passed away in April of 2023. So in the span of 1.5 years, I lost a brother and both parents. In between the death of my parents, the people who raised me, my wife told me that she wanted a divorce, that she wanted to separate, and really just didn't see a path forward for us in our 20 years of marriage. I'm not going to get into the reasons for that. I'll only say that at the time she made that choice, it wasn't what I wanted. I was very much opposed to it. I wanted us to find a way to work it out. Once that no longer seemed possible, I kind of acquiesced. I didn't fight it. I didn't try to stop it. So in February of 2023, so about 1.5 years ago, in between the death of my 2 parents, we separated. So we've been living separate for the last 1.5 years, and our divorce was finalized just a couple of months ago. As you can tell, that's still something that's very emotional for me to talk about. I'm not here to cast blame. Anybody who's been married for more than 5 minutes knows that it takes 2 to make a marriage work, and it takes 2 to make a marriage fail. So with that in mind, she has plenty of blame in all of it, and I have plenty of blame in all of it. And so regardless of how I felt at the time about us separating, whether I wanted it or didn't want it, it's where we are. It's where we ended up. And you will not hear me speaking negatively of her on this channel moving forward, even though we are now divorced and we are moving on with our separate lives. As a pastor, as a Christian, I know that it's not God's plan for divorce. But I also acknowledge that it happens. It happens even among Christians. Christians have the same divorce rate that non-Christians do. So that's that. Like I said, I don't want to. Please don't ask me questions about my ex-wife. It's not fair to her. It's not fair to my kids. It's not fair to me to get into stuff that needs to remain private. And please don't interpret my silence as somehow acknowledging that I did something nefarious, or that it's my fault, or that it's her fault, or there's some big secret that's being kept out of it. Our marriage failed for the same reason a lot of marriages fail. We just grew in very different directions. And what's done is done. My goal moving forward now is to have the best relationship possible with her for the sake of our kids. You know, we've still got 2 sons that are under 18, got a daughter who's 19, and they, more than anybody, are caught in the middle of this. And if you guys have known me for very long at all, you know how much I pride myself on trying to be a good dad. And the most heartbreaking part of all of this is not being able to see my kids every day. And I fought like crazy to make that not happen. But once that became inevitable, it was best for them that we make it work the best way we could moving forward. And so, as is the case, anytime you deal with huge changes like loss, you find a new normal. And so I've been through the death of a brother, the death of both parents, and a divorce, and moving twice in the last 2.5 years. It's been a lot. I'm not asking for pity or sympathy or anything like that. I'm just saying it's been a lot, you know, and my goal now is to make the best life possible for my children and to make sure that they have a good relationship with me and with their mom. It's important for them. I don't want them taking sides at all. That doesn't do anybody any good. It doesn't do her any good, doesn't do me any good, doesn't do our kids any good. So I want this all to be the best for all of us moving forward. So I appreciate those who have reached out to me publicly and privately and asked, hey, is everything okay? Because you noticed that my wife wasn't in our trips and streams and things like that. I want you to know that this doesn't change my view that as a Christian and as a pastor, that marriage is supposed to be for life, but also recognizing that sometimes it doesn't work that way, especially in situations where there's abuse and neglect and things like that. That was not the case here on either side. But I'm saying, please don't interpret what I'm saying as that people in really bad situations should stay in those situations because marriage is for life, because I recognize that's not always possible. So I'm just saying, I guess I'm just saying that's where we are. And so I appreciate your prayers. If you are a praying person, please pray for my kids. Please pray for Tara, my ex-wife. Please pray for me. Please pray for our families and pray for us moving forward as we navigate what all of this looks like. Because, you know, we were married for 21 years. It's a big change. It's a huge change. And so there's that. So anyway, to quote Hamilton, can we get back to politics, please? All right. So anyway, there's that. And I will get to your comments about all of that. So first time interacting here from Poland. Love your video. Sorry if I already asked this, but do I think JD Vance is a good choice? I think if I'm looking at this from the point of view of the Republicans, from the point of view of Donald Trump, it absolutely is. Why? He's conservative. He's from the Midwest. He's young. He seems to be pretty well spoken. He's kind of down to earth. He's kind of you could have a beer with him kind of guy. He's a Marine veteran. He has a compelling story. He was an opponent of Trump at one time, which it's always good to get your former enemies to become your allies and be on a ticket with you. So I think he checks all the boxes for the Republicans. I think he's actually a better running mate for Trump than Pence in a lot of ways. So I don't know. I mean, that's not a judgment on whether I think he'd be a good vice president and whether I agree with him politically. I just think looking at it from the Republican standpoint, he checks a lot of their boxes. Real RMG, thank you. Do you compare Biden dropping out to Polk or Theodore Roosevelt choosing not to run while in office? This is completely unique. I mean, we've never had a situation where somebody ran, got the nomination, or got the delegates for the nomination, would have gotten the nomination, and then dropped out. This has never happened. This is very, very unique in that standpoint. I feel a clean DNC nomination would have worked better for Harris. I agree. I do agree with that. I think in hindsight, the Democrats would probably also agree that they would have preferred a scenario in which Biden announced before the whole process that he wasn't seeking re-election, kind of like LBJ did in '68. It just didn't work out that way. Do I think Harris appeals to conservative Democrats? Not really. But I'm not a conservative Democrat, so I can't say. I mean, only conservative Democrats can truly speak to that. But my gut tells me no. I think they need somebody more moderate than she is. Professor What? Thank you. I appreciate that, my friend. Thank you so much. Malik, you mentioned your History Channel appearance. You had a dig at Woodrow Wilson. Okay, so let me try to remember what it was, because it was right at the end of our filming, and it didn't end up in the show. But it was during the talk about the Treaty of Versailles. And I think it was just something about his inflexibility and his Messiah complex that he went into that treaty negotiations with. It was something along those lines was my dig at him. Adam, thank you. 2022 was supposed to be a red wave, but it was a whimper. Nobody under 45 answers calls, texts, and emails, so polls failed hard. They aren't voting GOP. To a point, that's true. But I believe that you're going to see that this next group of young people that are coming up might be more divided than you realize. But listen, I don't know. I have no idea. I agree with you, though, that polling has become useless in a lot of cases. I guess we'll see, though. It all comes down to turnout. It's all about who mobilizes their base and gets the votes out. That's who's going to win. And why Trump was going to do really well against Biden is that his electorate was much more fired up than Biden's about voting for their guy. So now if the Democrats can get somebody that people are passionate enough about to go to the polls, it's a new race. Robert, thank you. How contentious do I expect the convention to be? I do not expect it to be. I think the Democrats are going to be adamant about coalescing around Harris in the next couple of days as quickly as possible. They don't want this to be contentious at all. They want this to be a celebration of Kamala Harris as their nominee and whoever their VP nominee is. They need enthusiasm. They need unity right now more than anything. Ringo, did I like the Oppenheimer movie? I liked it less than a lot of people did. I did like it. I wasn't as blown away by it as a lot of people were. But I tend not to be attracted to the artsy type of movies. And while it was a good story and I thought it was compelling and interesting, the artsy aspect of it, I didn't care for it. Same reason I wasn't a huge fan of the movie Dunkirk. It's cool that they told that story and visually appealing, but I didn't like how they told the story, I guess you could say. Marty, thank you. The difference between Biden's address last week and Trump's today is stark. It'll be interesting to see, though, what Vice President Harris says moving forward. Her next speech, her next public appearance is going to be vital. It's going to be huge, and I'm sure they know that. It's going to have to be very carefully orchestrated to hit all the right notes because it's going to be her first impression to the American people as a potential president. So they're going to have to plan that very carefully, and I think they will. Mooney, if you were tasked with creating a Mount Rushmore 2, who would be historical figures you would decide to choose? Wow. Gosh. I mean, how do you just choose 4? First of all, I'd get away from presidents. I wish we'd do that with money too. There's so many more interesting figures we could be putting on our money. Like somebody like Harriet Tubman, I think is great. They've talked about putting her on the $20 bill. I don't know. I just know it wouldn't be presidents. I'd put people who have been influential in history. I mean, you could have like a Martin Luther King Jr. on there. Maybe somebody like Susan B. Anthony. I don't know, somebody interesting in other parts of history besides just presidents. Jeremy, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Yes, Neo, I know they did polls, but as I've said a few times already, and maybe you missed it, polls when somebody's a hypothetical are different than when somebody's actually the candidate. Tell me again what the polls say a month from now after the Democratic convention, when you have a ticket on the Democrat side. Then we can see what the polls say. Johan, to be fair, Trump has a very strong PR lead with that pick. He does. Absolutely. That is a big time moment. That's going to be one of those pictures people are talking about 100 years from now in history. Absolutely. How much does a VP pick influence an election? Sometimes very little, sometimes a lot. I think, as somebody else has already mentioned, this is an election where the pick's going to influence a lot. I think it's going to matter a lot. So I guess we'll see. Camouflage. I'm actually going to try to start doing some Napoleon's Marshals this week. So it's coming. Do you think that Biden not resigning hurts Harris's chances? No, I don't think it does. I think it's best for her if she can focus on the race and not be thrust into the presidency because of a resignation. Kamala VP is going to be Shapiro on 100%. I would choose Shapiro if I were her, but there's a lot of other factors we might not be aware of. Ronald Jackson, thank you. This is just another attempt by the Dallas Cowboys and their fan base to distract us all from the fact that their existence hurts our country. Amen, brother. Amen. Harris can use donations collected. Anyone else would have to start from scratch. Fair point. I don't know how that would all work with someone else. Here's another good question. So, what time's the live tomorrow? Good. Thank you for bringing that up. It's actually going to be delayed by a week. No sooner had I mentioned in my video yesterday that we were doing that on Monday than something came up, and a couple of the guys that I was supposed to do that live stream with could not make it. So we're looking at Monday the 29th now. So as soon as we confirm that, I think it's probably going to be 8 p.m. Eastern time on Monday the 29th. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, we're going to do a live stream playing Risk. It's going to be me, Mr. Terry, Mr. Beat, the Fat Electrician, and Drew Durnall. The five of us playing that. So I think the 29th is what we're looking at for that. Tremendous Baguette. Off topic, but today I toured the Somme battlefields, having watched your videos. Awesome. What did you think? One of my favorite historic sites to visit. There's something, and my friends who were with me when I was there a month ago and visited for the first time said the same thing. There's something that draws you to that place. I don't know what it is. It's an intangible, but it's compelling. It really is. Okay, trying to get caught up here. Flex tape yeet. Do you agree with people who seem to think that Biden's on death's door? That's impossible to say. Jimmy Carter's been down death's door for like a year. I think there's definitely a slowing down with President Biden, as happens with many people of his age. It's not unique to him at all. Mia, as a Pennsylvanian, I think Shapiro is best as governor. Interesting. So I think there'd probably be a lot of people in Pennsylvania who'd be like, yeah, don't take our governor and make him vice president. A lot of people see vice president as a very irrelevant office. And of course, a lot of people have said too, well, what happens if J.D. Vance gets elected vice president? Well, Governor Mike DeWine, who's a Republican, a moderate Republican, would appoint his replacement for the next 2 years until a special election in 2026 to fill that seat. And a lot of people have said, well, what about Vivek Ramaswamy? I think that's how you say his name, who ran for president. He's from Ohio. He certainly could be appointed to that seat, and it would be an interesting choice to see Governor DeWine appoint him in that. I've already kind of addressed this a little bit. I think Vance ticks all the boxes for Trump. Chris is having a hard time accepting any Ohioan after Harding. Tough but fair. Tough but fair. All right. Slowly getting caught up here. A governor from a swing or red state would be a prudent choice for VP. Kelly from Kansas, Whitmer from Michigan, Shapiro from Pennsylvania, Beshear from Kentucky, or Cooper from North Carolina. I agree. I think it is going to be a governor, and it will be a governor from an important state that the Democrats want to win. Kentucky isn't really in play. Of course, Ohio is not in play, but there's Ohio's governor's a Republican anyway. All those other ones, I think, are solid possibilities. Tom Wolf, greetings from Hamburg, Germany. It's going to be interesting to see who it is. Yeah, I think she will be the Democratic nominee. Guess we're going to see who her running mate is. Chris Mallory for president. Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Not interested. Not interested at all. James, may I get your opinion on the idea that the USA won the Vietnam War because we never lost a battle? That's irrelevant. I mean, the U.S. very rarely won battles in the Revolution, but we won the war. Winning battles and winning a war is not the same thing. U.S. lost 60,000 men killed and did not achieve their objectives for that war. So there's no argument for the U.S. winning that war at all. But Andy Beshear, I think he would be a solid choice, but I don't know that he helps the ticket as much as some of the other possibilities do. Danimal, thank you. Do I believe this is Trump's race to lose if it wasn't already? Yes, I absolutely do believe it's Trump's race to lose. And I've told a lot of friends this, although obviously it gets shaken up now by Biden stepping down, that all Donald Trump has to do is not be crazy. I don't know if he's capable of that, but all Donald Trump's only job now is to appear as normal and as reasonable as possible. If he does that, he wins this election. If he goes back to the old Donald Trump saying crazy things, which he has been known to say on a regular basis, he can only hurt his chances. So we'll see. TJS, thank you. In the modern primary system, have you ever had a party basically force their nominee out because they thought they couldn't win? It never got to that point. I think in other cases where that was happening, it happened before you get to the nomination process and the voting. Once the voting happened, I don't think that's been the case. Joseph Stalin, thanks for that. If Trump wins, it will be interesting to see how he interacts with the new Labour government in the UK. Great point. That will be interesting because, of course, before he had a conservative government in the UK, which is, of course, our closest ally. Yeah, hopefully he would find a way to be able to work with Keir Starmer in that scenario, but you never know. Nora Bora, my dad thinks Liz Cheney would be a good VP. Nah, it wouldn't happen. Trump certainly wouldn't have picked her, and I don't see her bringing anything to the table that would benefit the Democrats in any way. And certainly only divide them further. Elijah, thank you for that. And Aztec as well, thank you for that. How does Josh Shapiro defend against what happened in Pennsylvania if he's picked as VP? He'll have to throw someone under the bus. I don't know exactly what you mean by what happened in Pennsylvania. Michelle Obama should run. Thoughts? I addressed this earlier. She's a great hypothetical candidate. It's very different than being a real candidate. When you see these polls that say, well, here's how Michelle Obama would do against Donald Trump, you're comparing somebody who's never run for political office and who has very high approval numbers because they were a first lady that filled that role well, against somebody who's been running for office, who's been elected, who's also lost an election, who's a well-known quantity. You can't compare the two. Until Michelle Obama was actually in a ticket and actually running, you can't compare. No, that's not happening. Elijah, I know we're talking Democrats, but wouldn't Rob Portman be a good option for president? I don't know. He was never that insanely popular here in Ohio, and he never had much of a national profile. And senators, by and large, don't make good presidential candidates. It's only been pretty recent that we've had more of that, with Barack Obama being elected as a senator. It rarely has happened. Only 3 times in history has someone been elected directly from the Senate to the White House. It was Harding, John F. Kennedy, and Barack Obama. That's been it. You've had other people who have served in the Senate that have become president, but not directly from the Senate. And you've had one president who became a senator after they were president, and that was Andrew Johnson. Abe's fadeaway. In the past, I know you mentioned you lean conservative. Yeah, we already talked about that. I already addressed the topic on Trump's stance on abortion. As a millennial, I didn't think I would be living through so many historical events in my lifetime. Amen. We all live through history, and the older you get, the more history you end up living through. Zach, how you doing, brother? 28 months as a member, man. You are my favorite Houston Astros fan, and that's saying a lot. Love the video you made on the assassination attempt and how you likely had done a presentation in front of the shooter. Was it emotionally tough? Yes, it is, because I know that what I do in speaking in schools about kindness and compassion matters, and it has an impact on a lot of people, but you always wish it had impacted that person. And so to know that he was probably in the audience twice over the years when I did those presentations and chose to do what he did, I don't walk around carrying the weight of, oh man, it's my fault that happened, anything like that. But I do see a missed opportunity there that I wish maybe could have gone differently. Life with Sean, thank you for that. Did I ever know or meet the late historian Brian Pohanka? No, I did not. Sorry. Oh man, I must be missing something in the chat. JD saying, calm down, Florence. Interesting. I didn't see what it was. I'm trying to get caught up on everything here. Shapiro was massively booed at the Pirates and Phillies. Really? Why? I wonder why that is. My impression has been that he's fairly popular in Pennsylvania. Have I ever not allowed people to donate on a live stream? No, I don't think so. Patrick, Democratic governors in red or swing states. Evers from Wisconsin, Shapiro, Pennsylvania, Cooper, North Carolina, Whitmer in Michigan, Mills from Maine, Kelly from Kansas, Bashir in Kentucky. I don't know that he said red or swing states. Okay. And Hobbs in Arizona. There you go. BQ, thank you for that. 3 railway engines. Thank you so much. No chance of it happening, but someone like Mitt Romney as a running mate would be interesting. A national unity ticket like 64. I don't see it happening this time around, but yeah, I think that would be a really interesting scenario. We almost got that, I think, in 2008. There was some talk that John McCain might pick Joe Lieberman, who was a conservative Democrat from New England, but that didn't end up happening. BQ, thank you again. Acolon, EA Sports College Football came out, and Joe Biden's quitting his job. He can't fool me. I already finished my first season playing that on the Xbox. I took on Kent State University. I won the MAC and won my bowl game, went 11-3 my first season. and I picked up a couple of 4-star recruits in the offseason. So I'm excited for year 2. Adam O'Connor, coming from Ireland, seeing President Biden withdraw from the campaign as a mixed bag. Buttigieg would be a good VP candidate. How will Kennedy react? All great points and questions. As I've said a few times already, I don't see Buttigieg as the candidate. I don't think he brings a lot to the table, and he does bring some additional baggage that Harris probably doesn't want. Ravenhill, thank you. This is your first presidential election. My daughter's first presidential election that she'll vote in as well. And I believe, unless something changes, she's planning to vote for Robert Kennedy Jr. Venomous Striker, what if they decide to nominate Bernie and Al Gore? Not going to happen. It's an interesting what if, but that won't happen. Here for years, thank you for becoming a member. Appreciate that. Can you please react to videos on the Japanese Sengoku period? Yes, I do want to do some more East Asian history. So that would be a good series to choose for sure. Trying to get caught up on the super chats, guys. I apologize. And I apologize to all of those who had non-super chats that I haven't been able to get to. Jimmy Carter 2024. Love President Carter. I think he's a great guy. I don't know that he's going to survive 2024. How similar and different are the UK and US elections? Well, it's just a fundamental difference in how we elect our president. Our president is both head of state and head of government, and it's elected by a series of local elections, I guess you can say. So it's kind of similar in that way. Each state votes for electors. But in the UK, of course, you're only electing a head of government, and what you are is you're electing members of parliament, and then the majority party, or the party that forms a coalition, gets the the prime minister. So some similarities, some differences. Floyd, I thought you didn't want to get into modern topics. So I mentioned at the top of the video, and I'll update it again for those who weren't aware. I've recognized more and more, and listen, having this YouTube channel is just about evolution, because YouTube's evolving, because the nature of what appeals to people and the nature of the world and ourselves is constantly evolving. You guys who have been around since the basement days have seen evolutions in this channel and how things operate. And I'm recognizing more and more that there is, in fact, a place for my voice in all of this. It doesn't change my desire to be as unbiased as possible, while also recognizing the inherent biases that we all have. But the success of my video the other day about the assassination attempt helped me to understand that there is a place for me to have a voice in all of this, while trying not to be controversial. And you can see how many people are in the live stream right now. This isn't about opportunism. It's not about me saying, wow, a lot of people watch when I talk about this stuff, so I'm going to do it more. It's more recognizing people apparently want to hear me talk about this stuff. And so I'm going to try to do more of that. So it doesn't mean I'm going to be talking about modern politics all the time, but I will dabble in this, especially in an election year like this. Mr. Axel Rose, thank you for that. Hope you're doing well. My dad passed away Tuesday, and the videos helped me get through the week. I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. As I mentioned a little while ago, having just lost the father who raised me a year and a half ago, I know exactly what you're feeling. And as I mentioned a little bit ago about the other stuff going on in my personal life, because my wife told me she wanted a divorce, I think it was 9 days after I lost the dad who raised me, I'm realizing now that our divorce is final, that I really didn't get a chance to mourn him properly. And so in the last couple of weeks, it's been a tough time for me. Plus, the house I grew up in, the house that I was raised in, the house that my grandparents bought in 1971 was just sold because my grandma was on Medicaid, and because my two uncles who live in the house now weren't able to secure a loan to keep it. It was taken, seized by the government, and sold at a sheriff's auction, and I wasn't in a position to be able to buy it. So they have to be out at the end of the month. And so that's also part of this, is that seeing the house that I grew up in being taken from our family has been hard. And it's been another reason to mourn in all of this. So I feel like I'm just now mourning him, even though he died a year and a half ago. So that's been hard. So I know what you're feeling, and I'm really sorry that you have to go through that. The cutting room floor, your birthday is the 15th. Yay, history. Happy birthday. Okay, where are we at? I'd like to say I'm slowly getting caught up, but I'm not. Hi, Chris. Are you familiar with the story of the Emperor of America, Joshua Edward Norton III? Vaguely familiar, not enough to really comment much on it. I do remember hearing something about that. Did I watch the invasion of Quebec? I did not watch it because I will probably do a reaction to it at some point, and I don't watch videos that I might react to. Do you think this will have any sway on how the Congress and Senate races? There's always the possibility of the kind of coattails effect. They talk all the time in elections about the impact that the top of the ticket has on the down ticket races. So yeah, it's possible. Like I wonder, for example, if having J.D. Vance on the ticket will impact the Senate race, where it seems like Sherrod Brown, despite the fact that Ohio has been increasingly red in presidential elections, we still tend to reelect our incumbent senators. And that includes Sherrod Brown, who's a Democrat. So I think it would take a pretty strong coattail effect to change the outcome of that race. Vasilis, also nice shirt. Yeah, hey, Wrexham. It's going to be interesting to see. They could become the first team ever to get promoted from the National League to the championship in successive seasons. That's never happened before. Patrick, we need a much bigger Congress. I agree with that. That was something my friend Matt Beat talked about on his channel, about increasing representation. Absolutely agree with that. Austin Mario, thank you. My dad thinks history is repeating itself. Yes, 68, definitely some strong parallels. As I said before, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And there are definitely some rhymes with 1968 to today. Cosmic the Spider, thank you for that. Some guy, better than in my country of Russia, where the one guy is always on the ballot. Yeah, could always be worse. At least we actually have a choice, right? What did you think about the other GOP candidates? Honestly, I didn't pay. I'm acknowledging here, I didn't pay much attention to the choices. I think there probably were. No, I know there were better choices than Donald Trump for the Republicans. But I don't know that any of them were compelling enough to change the result. I'll just come out and say I voted for Nikki Haley in the primary here in Ohio, even though there really wasn't much of a choice by that point. KB Richmo, thank you for that. Elizabeth Ann, regardless of your politics, Hillbilly Elegy was worth reading, at least as an independent. I think so. Yes, I would like to read it only because I think there are probably some parallels between my story and his. Not in how, I mean, he was raised by his grandparents just as I was, trying to build a relationship with his mother, which I think is admirable. Now that she's been sober for 10 years, his roots being in I think in West Virginia in his case. Maybe it was Kentucky. Yes, this is a Wrexham jersey. Piano, thank you for that. My opinion of the threat to our democracy rhetoric, regardless of the accuracy of it, I don't think it is a helpful statement to make. I think there are ways to make that point without saying it that way. I think it's important for all people with very amplified voices to be very careful of the words they choose. And that especially goes for Donald Trump, who is never careful with his words. And I think it applies to people talking about Donald Trump too. I'm not saying it's the fault of people who said that for inspiring this guy to shoot, because we don't know what his reasons were. But I think anytime you label anyone as a threat, real or not, it makes them a target. Thoughts on Bashir for 2028 is that if the Dems lose, I think he's going to be in that conversation if he chooses to throw his hat in the ring. Did I ever try cigarettes? I want Newports, EU. Never once. I grew up in a family where almost everybody in my family smoked. But no, I never had any desire to smoke. I like would leave the house and go to school and like take a change of clothes because I hated smelling like it when I went to school because my family all smoked. Corey Kelly, say Harris is the nominee. She will. Yeah, I agree. How hard or easy will it be for her to run from the aspects of Biden's administration that are deeply unpopular? I think as the vice president, she can do that to a point. It would be important for her to speak strongly about the areas that she had in common with him. But I think there is room for her to distance herself from some of that and say, hey, listen, I was the vice president. I wasn't the one making those decisions. I had a voice, but my voice wasn't listened to. Whether that was the case or not, I think she could certainly make that argument. What's the likelihood of the 25th being enacted before or after the election? It won't be. If it hasn't been by now, it won't be. The Democrats aren't going to do that to one of their own. And especially Kamala Harris doesn't want to be seen, if she's the nominee, she doesn't want to be seen as being complicit in removing him from office. And she would have to sign off on that to make it happen. I don't see that happening. Have I ever played Democracy 4 on my gaming channel? I have not. I've played it a little bit on my personal time, but not in the election. I have not, or on the channel, I haven't. Jason Jones, I suppose we have a new gold standard for putting country first. I don't know how much it's really that. I think it took a lot of pressure for him to get to that point. I think that's the way it's going to be spun by the Democrats, is look at what a noble thing Joe Biden did. It was less about that and more about pressure from donors and supporters, or else he would have done it a lot sooner. Do you think Trump will be seen as a martyr? I think there was a little bit of that. I think that time has come and gone. By the time we get to election day, people are going to have forgotten about what happened last week. It's going to be all about the choice between candidates. I'm just now getting to all of the comments about my comments about the personal stuff, and I appreciate all of you and your comments. And like I said, for those who were here when I was talking about that stuff, listen, this is not, I didn't say this stuff publicly to try and get people on my side or to give me sympathy because of what happened between me and my wife. I just wanted you guys to be aware of it because on my channel, my family has played such a prominent role in my live streams and in pictures and posts and things I talk about. I felt it was only fair that I at least let you guys know what was going on. This is not in any way meant for me to demonize my ex-wife or anything that has happened. I just wanted you to be aware of it. And I truly 100% want what's best for her and what's best for me, but especially what's best for my kids. My kids are my primary concern, and I think she would probably say the same thing. I wish nothing but the best for Tara, for my ex-wife. I hope she meets someone and has a life with him and he's everything for her that I couldn't be. And I hope that I'm able to do the same thing in my life. So you won't hear anything from me negative spoken about my ex-wife or about anything that has happened. What happened between us is between us, and that's where it should remain. Okay, let me try and get caught up on the last chat. So I'm going to wrap this up. It's been 2 hours already. Man, crazy. It's been amazing. I really appreciate how many of you guys have been a part of this stream. And I do apologize for those who had chats that I didn't get to. All it means is I need to live stream more often so I have more time to get to your questions. And we are going to be doing, I'm not traveling. I've only got one more trip in the next 2 months, and that's going to be a quick overnight trip to New York to record for the History Channel. So I'm pretty much home for the next 2 months. It's soccer season for my son. And so I'm going to have more time to live stream. And that includes some private streams for members and patrons so I can get to those questions I haven't been able to get to. Uncanny Suit, thank you for being a member. Life is tough, but we love you. And it's so much better. I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah, thank you guys. And this community has been a great distraction for me in all the stuff that's been going on for the last month and a half. And I am going to go back after the stream's over and get caught up on all of your chats. So I know I've only been throwing up all the super chats just because there have been so many of them, but I am going to go back and read all of the comments that I missed after the stream is over, the ones I didn't get to. So know that I will see those if I didn't already. And if there are any super chats that I missed, I'll try to answer those in the comments section. And if I don't get to them here in a minute. Hi, Chris, first time viewer of the live stream. Been binge watching your videos. Thank you. I appreciate that, Ryder. Maish, love you guys too. I mean that. This community has been amazing. And I've met so many incredible people through this process. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. The one thing I did not plan for when I started this channel is how much I would absolutely love the community that we would build around our shared love of history. So I really do appreciate every single one of you. So Easy Odd, thank you for that. Punk Fruit, you've been one of my favorite YouTube channels for many years. Yes, I do need to do the last Christian Useful Charts video. Thank you for the reminder. I absolutely do need to do that. Sam, thank you. Source of positivity. I try to be. It hasn't always been easy. You know, listen, I'm hardly the first person to ever go through a divorce, hardly the last. I know many of you have as well. And you know how really, really hard that can be, especially where there's kids involved. Yeah, I've mentioned this already. My speculation is Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania. Sandwiggle, just got out of your first relationship of 5 years. And I like to think that just because it's over doesn't mean it failed. That's a great way to look at it. And listen, if absolutely nothing else, my marriage brought me 3 amazing kids that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. So even if our marriage didn't work out, we got something right with Rachel, Caleb, and Eli. And they are my life now. So being a dad, I can put all that energy that I wasn't able to successfully put into my marriage into being the best dad I can possibly be. So I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. As I said, any of the super chats I didn't get to, I will answer in the comments section of this video because the video will go live. But I'm still I'm 40 minutes. I'm so far behind on the chat, and I apologize to everybody who super chatted. I will answer those in the comment section of the video when it goes live. So my apologies for not getting to it already. But I do. It's been 2 hours, and my voice is exhausted. It's been emotionally exhausting talking about this stuff. And I got to go check on my kids. So thank you guys for joining me for the chat. We're going to do this more often, I promise. Thanks for watching.